calls and get yourself again. Now sit over here. That microphone will adjust, make it comfortable, and speak up so everybody can hear you, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name for the record.
Jennifer Havey,
And Ms. Havey, where are you currently employed?
Bluebonnet Children's Advocacy Center.
And what is your job position there?
I'm a licensed professional counselor.
And where did you go to college at?
Texas State University and then Sul Ross University.
And you got your bachelor's degree from Texas State?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that in?
Education.
And what did you get from Sul Ross University?
Master's of Education and Counseling.
Okay. And did you previously work for the Uvalde Independent School District?
Yes.
And what did you work as?
I was a teacher.
Was that before you obtained your master's?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And are you a licensed professional counselor?
Yes, ma'am, through the state of Texas.
Okay. And are you licensed by the Texas Board of Professional Counselors?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're current on your licensing? At this point, Your Honor, the state would tender Jennifer Havey as an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder counseling.
We're not in federal court. I don't know if the court can do that, but I will.
Any questions on?
How is that description acknowledging expertise in that specific area?
Yeah, she's an
How is that
education.
anywhere even close? She's a school teacher with a degree in counseling.
Yeah, and not even a specialization in children's therapy, in post-traumatic therapy. I don't know if they have a. It just seems like she. Again, are we trying to? Adrian's responsible not only for.
And she was a teacher at Uvalde. How is that? She can testify if she testify if she actually treats kids. But as a general expert?
Well, just professionally, wouldn't you be too close to the situation? I mean,
Yeah.
wouldn't this be like, I have to recuse myself because I was involved and couldn't be objective?
Yeah, and especially what the actual
Yeah, as a board I will say that I would agree that she is
Okay.
good at what she does and that she has every right to testify about what she does.
All right, so you may proceed.
Ms. Havey, can you, where are you currently employed at?
Right now, Bluebonnet Children's Advocacy Center.
Okay, and for the jury and for the record, can you explain what the Bluebonnet Children's Advocacy Center is?
Yes, it gives a safe place for children to come and talk about their trauma, abuse, and then through that, and so the child doesn't have to say things over and over again. They say it one time to an interviewer, and through that, officers, medical, CPS all work together through the investigation, and then they offer mental health services to the child. For the child.
So at the Children's Advocacy Center, you deal with clients, patients who suffer abuse or trauma of some sort.
Yes.
Okay. And through that, have you provided counseling to some of the survivors in this case?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, and for the record, those medical records and counseling records have already been admitted into evidence, okay? So what I want you to do, though, is can you explain to the jury
Nick, can you
what is
pause?
post-traumatic stress disorder?
This is fairly incestuous, and what I mean is typically as a client, as a counselor or a medical professional, you recuse yourself from seeing people that are have been in a traumatic, people that you know very well. That
Yeah.
she was allowed to because I feel bad for this woman. If she was there during the incident, she to herself has some level of PTSD. And how can she help children when she's probably working through her own? I mean, unless she's really good at all the steps and stuff.
I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I could give good answer on why anything in this trial is being brought to a jury. I can't.
Because I'm not trying to be an ass. I'm not.
Yeah.
But this isn't proper.
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is ongoing stress after the traumatic event.
And how does that manifest itself? What are the symptoms of PTSD?
Can manifest itself in many ways through the body, through headaches, stomach aches, nausea, as well as wanting to leave your home or not being able to leave your home, socially, trust with others,
And we call that disassociation.
dissociation.
Is that what it's called? Okay. And do you also see children with anxiety and depression that are suffering from PTSD?
Both, yes.
Okay. And are these considered a disorder
Yes,
or an impairment of some sort?
disorder, yes.
Okay. And what are the different ways that these are explained through children with PTSD? In other words, do they express it through guilt, or how does that work?
Through PTSD. Can you repeat your question? Just so I'm answering it.
Right. Well, if they have PTSD, do they also have maybe other impairments? Such as,
Yes, I apologize. Yes, usually with PTSD, anxiety comes as well with it, hand in hand, only because the stress, your body becomes alert, hyper alert, and stress rises, and that brings on anxiety.
okay. Do you know what survivor's guilt is?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that to the jury?
Yes, it's when a survivor feels guilty for living.
And have you seen that through some of your patients through their counseling?
That's me.
This is why
She's
she should
breaking
be,
down on the stand and is allowed to testify as an expert.
also, this is, she's not answering like an expert. There are, as a licensed counselor, you should say, I gave them the diagnostic. This is the diagnostic. We've heard experts explain these things before.
Yeah. She should, this professional should have recused herself from testifying about this and this is bad from a professional standpoint. She's there as an expert going to testify about the trauma some of these kids went through, and she's breaking the fuck down.
Also, has she been licensed? Has she been trained in forensic interviews? Because there is a certain legal standard you have to get if she's talking about abuse cases. This is, again, my heart goes out to this woman, but this is not proper.
I actually don't feel if she was a treating psychologist, therapist, counselor, and only that, this would be so unprofessional to the degree that I would question her ability to even perform at her work.
That's the other thing. This is, again, because if a child who has had a traumatic situation is put with a parent or an older person who is unstable, they might start parentifying themselves or, becoming the adult in the situation. This is, you are not supposed to be this emotional.
No. This is this is cause for mistrial, in my opinion.
Yeah, also, this is so outside the norms. You don't have someone who was within the crisis situation. You don't have someone who already has interacted, knows them.
Jesus.
Now, what is a triggering event?
It's when something happens that escalates anxiety in their body. It's when you're triggered by something that brings you back to whatever traumatic event they had.
Is it a sensation that stimulates the nervous system?
Yes.
And is it a biological response in a child?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
It's an automatic response of your body. It's not something that's they think of. It's protection. So dissociation is protection mode.
And what can be a triggering event in a child with PTSD?
I've seen many things that trigger children right now. I'm seeing helicopters, loud noises trigger children, colors,
What colors?
red.
Why red?
It's the color of blood.
Okay.
I'm trying to avoid being an asshole.
Me too.
But she should not be near these kids.
Okay, I'm going to be a jerk just because I'm a twice college dropout. And even I know that you don't define a word with the word. So
No.
when she's like, triggered is when like you're triggered. You have a master's degree, or so you
Yeah.
said. You should be
Yeah.
able to give a clear, concise, clinical explanation of what it is and the diagnostic tests you would use to determine it.
Yeah. And she did the same with survivor's guilt. What is that? When you're guilty for surviving. Are you... It's... I don't want her on the stand. I don't want her near the kids. If she breaks down this easily here, how does she act in front of these kids who need professional help?
Also, I don't remember helicopters playing any part in this incident. So why are these children from Uvalde being triggered by helicopters?
Yeah, this is her own PTSD and her own triggers showing. This is not expert testimony. It's not even close. Folks, I'm pissed off here.
Yeah.
She should have enough self-reflection to know, holy crap, I'm breaking down on the stand. Judge, I shouldn't be here.
Well, not only should she know, but the state should know that any information gleaned from her is going to be instantly tested or lack credibility because of professional rules of standards and ethics that are incumbent on. She has a license. There are rules of conduct and ethics, and I'm going to guess that one of those says if you are too close to a situation, you do not counsel people that you're close. If you've been in the same thing, you don't do that.
And explain to the jury what these triggers do. What do they do in a child physically that they're called triggering events? What do they do?
Some children, when triggered, they might cry. Their heart might race.
She's describing herself.
They're also so subjective. That's why counseling and therapy are so subjective. That's why they have those diagnostic tools, because it's so easy to assign things or possibly. That's why we need some objective stuff.
Yeah.
They might get under a table and not want to leave. They might want to hold someone's hand for safety. I have many clients I'm trying to go through, so many of them.
Well, do these triggering events take the child back to the trauma that was suffered?
Yes.
Okay. And is the child able to differentiate between where they are now versus the traumatic event?
Not always. It brings them back to the event, and their brain believes, or their brain is saying, no, this is happening, although they know obviously it's not happening over and over again, but they believe it is. Their body feels it as if it's happening.
Now, what type of techniques do you use to provide treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder?
So I work with children and adolescents with PTSD, and we use sensory boxes, art, breathing techniques, reframing, like rewriting or rethinking the trauma, knowing it's not there any longer, narrative, oral and written.
Is one of these things you do called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing?
EMDR, yes.
Reading.
That is evidence-based treatment.
Can you explain to the jury what that is and how it works?
Sure. It's bilateral stimulation of the brain, which it's used to reprocess the trauma they've had. So although, may I give an example?
Yes.
Although they know that trauma has already passed, after EMDR, and bilateral stimulation just means back and forth with the brain, after EMDR, then they're able to talk about the trauma and it doesn't affect them as much. So their nervous system is a little de-escalated, I should say.
Okay. And what are the things you do with that? I mean, what specific techniques do you use?
So you can use this eye movement. So you can use a light bar where they follow the light back and forth. Or with my age, we use a lot of tappers, and all that's doing is buzzing their hand like left, right, and that's bilateral stimulation of the brain, which helps reprocess the trauma. That's what it's used for.
And what is TFCBT?
Trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy. It is for children and adolescents to, at their own pace, walk through their trauma with coping skills, narratives, and so forth.
Now, is post-traumatic stress disorder, is that something that can be eventually treated, and or how does that work?
Treated, yes. Both TFCBT and EMDR are both evidence-based for PTSD for children and adolescents. So PTSD can be treated, yes. People do heal from PTSD, although it is always ongoing. And when I say that, that sounds kind of backwards, but what I'm saying is it does not affect them as much, because our goal, or my goal as a therapist or a therapist, would be that they're able to hopefully function day to day in their living, live a healthy.
A therapist is not allowed to diagnose. How the fuck is she allowed to testify as an expert on PTSD when she's not even allowed to make that diagnosis?
Also, is the light stim I feel like someone sitting in like Harvard Medical School in 1910 learning about this brand new wicked thing that's going to cure everything called a lobotomy, and I feel like I'm the one person that's like, does anyone think this is a bad idea? So basically you're taking vulnerable children, making them talk about their trauma over and over again and dissect it. You're not a forensic interviewer. The problem with this is, does anyone remember the 1980s when we had all the satanic cults and we had a bunch of children who were saying, yeah, mommy, or yeah, prosecutor, therapist, they took me to, the airport and I saw goats, Basically they were therapizing these kids to the point where they were coming up with false memories. This is, I don't know.
This is pissing me off to no end. This is so unprofessional, both from the state and for her to accept this.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, look, I don't know. I didn't go to college for counselology, so maybe there are things, but that's why with these soft sciences, we need these diagnostic tests. We need objective information, because it's such a subjective subject. It's because she is traumatized. All the children are traumatized. She sees it through a lens of, they have trauma from the jump. Marley was dead to begin with. So because she's had trauma, everyone has trauma.
Yeah.
Healthier day than they did the day of the trauma, right? Making progress.
Is there a permanent brain injury associated with PTSD?
Yes.
And again, you treated some of the survivors.
Is she a medical doctor?
Pass the witness, Sean.
I don't think she is. And she is, as their counselor, as their therapist, not psychologist, not psychiatrist.
Yeah,
She-
I mean, does she have CT scans? Does she have proof? Like, where's the documented proof that there is a brain damage, that there's some sort of injury? Because when you say injury, that means something very specific for most lay people. It means like, okay, is it by decreased blood flow? Is it by lowering of neurotransmitters? How can you explain that this is injurious to the anatomical thing that is the brain?
yeah,
Thank you, Judge. Ms. KBD,
Yes, sir.
my name's Jason Goss. I'm one of the attorneys for Adrian. And, I want to start out by saying thank you. I mean, I know it's difficult even for treaters and providers because you're having to experience that with kids, right? So there's a secondary trauma that goes on with you as you're having to work through that. The fact you're willing to do that is important. So thank you for that. I did want to talk, not necessarily, I know that we talked about, yes, you treated some of the kids. Are they all confined to 111 and who were in 111 and 112? Or were there some other kids at Rob that day that have also come in for treatment?
I
survivors?
treat many kids for Robert,
So not necessarily even the ones that were in the room
not necessarily.
with the jury. And that's because, and the point I'm trying to make with that is that's because you can get anybody that's involved in that situation can have PTSD for that situation,
Yes, sir.
including the officers,
Yes.
including the witnesses, the teachers, the adult. You would agree with that?
Anyone in a traumatic event.
Sure. And I guess and I didn't hear, I know you worked at well, I call it a CAC, but a child advocacy center.
Yes, sir.
Do you ever do forensic interviews or are you just the counseling side of that?
On the counseling side. So after the forensic interviewer, then the client is passed to me
Okay.
for therapy.
And it sounds like you have a lot of experience with PTSD and trauma and talking to people who have suffered trauma. So I want to ask you some questions about your understanding of the medicine and the science in your discipline. And as far as like what you have been able to learn about how people who experience trauma, I guess, relate and talk about it. Okay. So you would agree that like with the kids you've worked with the adults you've worked with who's experienced that kind of trauma, the next day after that they're not 100% accurately recalling everything that's happened perfectly because trauma affects memory and stress affects memory.
Trauma does affect memory.
It does, right? And you know that. And so asking somebody the next day who's gone through a situation like that, what happened, you might not get exactly what happened or exactly in the right order, exactly in the right times, right? Because if they've gone through a stressful event.
they are using her experience with memory and trauma in order to go back to Miss Flores about her interesting lapse of memory. I mean, she believed the person she described as the person she was looking at who did the pacing back and forth, which the prosecution claims is Adrian. She described him as wearing khaki shorts, white button t-shirt, polo shirt, and a full beard. Adrian Gonzalez was in uniform and does not have a full beard. The next officer who showed up a few minutes later were shorts and a button t-shirt, polo shirt. So, and she claims that she spent 2 to 7 minutes with Adrian, and she probably couldn't pick him out in the lineup. But we are supposed to trust her memory about where the shooter was.
I really like the defense because they are able to, in a very gentle way, bring out facts from these witnesses. It has been really masterful. I mean, I'm not in a law school, but I think that this would be a really good thing to show law students on how you cross a very sympathetic witness, because sometimes you have to. Sometimes, and how do you do it?
Talking about interviewing Adrian too soon. I haven't heard. Did you mention Adrian's name?
So he is bringing out from this this witness, who is now an expert in counseling, that it is common knowledge that after a highly traumatic incident, you should wait 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 days because within the first 24 hours,
Mm.
your recollection of things might be jumbled due to the stress response.
Isn't it weird that within law enforcement, interview every witness as soon as possible because the memories are as fresh as the most fresh? Did you know that in most cases that I've heard of, at least, officers who has been in a shooting aren't interviewed until a week later so they can gather their thoughts? Isn't that strange?
So I do like that the defense is able to use these witnesses to get out
Mm.
universal truths about PTSD and different things, because it's a gentle way of reminding people that Adrian was also in traumatic without doing the very kind of crumbly thing like I'm a victim too. It's
Mm.
much more subtle and artful, and I just think it's really good to watch.
Mm.
I'm a nerd. I'm like, oh my gosh, their lawyering so great. Like, fangirl.
Like that has caused trauma, then their recall of that can be inaccurate. You would agree with that?
You might not. Every person's different.
Sure. And just so you know, I'm not talking about any of your kids or any of those kids at Rock. I'm not talking about any of their statements or anything about them. I'm using your experience to talk about, because there are other witnesses and other people that were at the scene who
Yes.
also kind of went through this. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. So the stress, you know, the stress can be like maybe no, maybe don't, but stress can cause things like auditory exclusion when it's happening. It can cause time compression when it's happening. Those kind of things can happen as the person is witnessing an event if it's a high stress or traumatic event.
Yes, sir.
Right. And so sometimes they don't hear things that you would think that they hear. Sometimes they mix things up, like what order things were in, right?
Yes.
You would agree with that, because, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but even people who, somebody can be absolutely sure of something and then see a video that didn't happen the way they thought it happened, but in their mind, because of the way their memory has been kind of forged in the trauma, in their mind it happened this way, even if there was evidence that they could see that it didn't happen that way. That's because that's how people process in trauma. You agree with that?
That's how trauma works.
Right. So, and that's all I'm trying to point out is that it is hard. It is hard with witnesses and other people to get sometimes accurate recounting if they've gone through a traumatic event.
As a therapist, I'm not there for accuracy. I'm there to provide it.
100%. But I think one of the things you do want them to do is process by, like you said, you use different techniques to process by remembering or recounting the trauma or going through and talking about their trauma. And like I said, it's not up to you, or you don't care whether they're accurate, but you don't care if they're accurate about what they're saying. You want them to process it therapeutically.
Correct.
Right. But your experience and understanding of how trauma works and how stress works on memory and recalling and recounting is really what I'm going to. Like, that it can affect those different things. It's a physiological effect that happens to people.
Yes.
Right. I'll pass it. And thank you again. Very
No
good.
more questions, Judge, and she's excused.
Not subject to recall, Mr. Gus?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. You are excused, not subject to recall. Thank you very much.
Mike Westphal.
I'm still pissed off that she was even allowed to testify, breaking down on the stand. But the defense, yeah, good use of that witness also means they don't have to call their own,
Yeah, and I
or
think
they will
this-
call their own to bolster. Yeah,
Yeah,
what she testified to there was absolutely correct. Memories, da 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 da.
I also think that the state did a big misstep by showing Adrian's video
Yeah.
interview right after. They don't have to get him on the stand.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
he came off incredibly competent, and he seemed like someone who was genuinely trying to do his best the entire time.
Yeah.